Hey, it's Craig Ward, founder and managing director of Bearhug Recruiting. In my world of executive search, everything comes back to one core question. It's a question that I ask every day in two different directions. Why would someone want to come work for you? That's when I'm screening potential clients. And why would someone want to hire you? When I'm screening candidates. As you're about to listen to this NotebookLM interpretation of a piece that I wrote on the 27 mistakes early and growth stage CEOs make when hiring executives, it's only fair that I pause to explain what you're about to hear is really me answering that same question. It's my answer to why should someone choose you as their external talent partner to run an executive search, and on the candidate side, why should a top 10% executive who isn't even looking to leave their job take your call and seriously consider the role that you're pitching? NotebookLM, which is Google's large language model, read and debated my report for you. It gets a few words hilariously wrong, like #outro, but overall it captured the essence perfectly. And I left those slips in because they made me smile. They don't really change the message. If you listen through this piece, whether just a few minutes or all the way through, and then hop on over to bearhugrecruiting.com to download the free report yourself, I think you'll get a clear sense of the depth of work that went into this report. This content was shaped by years of hands-on recruiting, learning through trial and error, and the countless pitfalls that make CEOs stumble when hiring executives. My hope is that whether you're a CEO, an investor, or an executive yourself, you'll take away something valuable, maybe even something worth sharing. With that said, let's jump in and hear what NotebookLM did with the 27 mistakes report, which you can read and download yourself at bearhugrecruiting.com.
Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're really undertaking a critical mission. We want to crack open the most painful and, frankly, expensive mistakes tech startup CEOs make when they decide, okay, it's time to hire executive leadership.
Yeah, it's a subject that's, often obscured. There's this assumption that if you've got the money, you've got the momentum, finding a great leader should be, well, easy.
Right. But our sources, the stuff we're looking at today, it tells a different story. A much more brutal story, actually.
Exactly.
So the core source material we're diving into is this highly tactical and honestly brutally candid report from the team at Bearhug Recruiting.
Mm-hmm.
It's drawn directly from post-mortems, hundreds of executive searches for these high-growth startups. And the most shocking thing really is this. Failure usually isn't about being too early stage.
No.
It's about tactical setup failure. It's like a kind of self-sabotage by the CEO before the search even gets off the ground.
And these mistakes, they just compound. They turn into delays, devastating mishires, and, well, as the report puts it, millions of dollars in lost opportunity costs.
Wow.
Most founders just, they weren't really taught how to design a proper executive search strategy. They assume recruiting is like this generic function.
Right. Use the same playbook for everyone.
Yeah, they try to use the same playbook for an entry-level person as they would for, say, a chief product officer. It just doesn't work.
Okay, so before we jump into the mistakes themselves, let's maybe frame this discussion a bit. Let's talk about Bearhug Recruiting because their perspective, it really informs every tactical nugget we're about to share with you.
Good idea.
So Bearhug Recruiting is a boutique executive search firm. They're a trusted partner specifically for early and growth stage environmental technology and enterprise software startups. Think seed to Series C.
Right. The ones really looking to cross that chasm, get to higher levels of funding, and ultimately unlock that, 100 million in revenue scale.
And here's the key difference, I think. Most firms, they sell access to a database, right? A list of names.
But what Bearhug sells is certainty. Certainty that the right leader will be found fast, and that leader will actually change your company forever.
That focus on certainty is really crucial here. And the result of working with Bearhug is that nearly every client becomes a repeat client.
And you see VC firms referring Bearhug across their portfolios, both pre and post-funding.
Why?
Because their process, it just consistently delivers exceptional outcomes. And you even hear from the candidates. They routinely describe working with Bearhug as like the most thorough and thoughtful recruiting experience of their careers.
That level of rigor, that thoughtfulness, that's exactly what you need when you're dealing with these really high-stakes hires.
So our mission today really is to break down these 27 most expensive mistakes, the ones that early and growth stage tech startup CEOs made before they even started talking to Bearhug.
These are the mistakes that derailed searches right from the beginning, caused months of delays. We need to help you avoid that derailment completely.
Absolutely.
So to structure this deep dive, we're going to align these 27 failures with Bearhug's own battle-tested search blueprint. It's built on 3 core pillars.
Right. Master these 3, and you really can land a world-class leader with speed and, importantly, confidence.
Okay, what are they?
First, it's structured recruiting workflow. Second, comprehensive sourcing strategy. And third, role positioning and pitch.
Got it. Workflow, sourcing, pitch. Let's jump in. All right, section 1. This is all about laying the foundation, defining the internal process. It's really the project management of executive hiring.
Exactly. If this part is messy or inconsistent or just lacks objective structure, everything that follows, everything from sourcing to negotiations is just going to suffer.
Okay, so let's start with the operational setup. Where do things go wrong first?
Mistake number 1. And this is really the root of almost all subsequent delays. Not locking in a target start date to reverse engineer your search strategy and schedule around.
It sounds so simple, doesn't it? You know, a CEO just says, I want the new head of sales sometime in the next maybe 3 or 4 months. But you're saying that vagueness is lethal. Why? Why does a specific non-negotiable date matter so much?
Because the entire search, everything has to be reverse engineered from that date. Look, the biggest risk in executive hiring isn't really finding great candidates. There are great people out there.
Okay.
It's aligning your timeline with their timeline. Think about it. You're asking someone who's performing at the absolute highest level, a passive candidate, probably...
Someone not looking.
Exactly. You're asking them to leave the best work of their career. Their timeline is rigid. It's defined by vesting schedules, board meetings, major project milestones they need to wrap up. They just don't have time for a search that, quote, might take 6 months.
Okay, so if the target start date is, say, July 1st, then working backward, we know the offer needs to be accepted by maybe May 1st, which means the finalist slate has to be identified by, what, early April, and you just keep backing it up.
Precisely. The actionable insight here, the pro tip, is that time to scale is your enemy. Every single month of delay compounds the cost.
How so?
Well, think about a head of sales role, maybe $300,000 salary. If that role stays open for just an extra quarter,
Yeah.
you haven't just lost $75,000 in salary cost. The report suggests the loss in potential revenue is often 3 to 4 times their salary per quarter. That can easily add up to $1 million in lost momentum just from that delay.
Wow. $1 million.
You need tight, like 30-day ways in the process to keep those passive candidates engaged and moving toward a decisive outcome. Otherwise, they just drift away.
Okay, that really frames the cost of inaction clearly. Let's move to mistake number 2. Delegating a mission-critical hire to someone without the bandwidth or expertise to deliver. Now, this often seems like an innocent mistake, right? A well-intentioned move by an overstretched founder.
Oh, absolutely. It is. They assume, hey, I've got a highly capable chief of staff, or my COO is amazing, they can run this. Or, maybe worse, they hand it off to an internal recruiter.
Who might be great at finding engineers or something.
Exactly. They might be fantastic at finding individual contributors, but have absolutely zero experience operating at the C-level search complexity. Executive recruiting, it's an entirely different discipline.
But wait, why is it so different? I mean, shouldn't a really great COO be able to manage a high-stakes recruiting project? They manage every other critical function in the company.
Well, C-level search demands a level of discretion, a really high-touch narrative control, and frankly, access to a passive network that the internal team usually just doesn't possess. Plus, the CEO's delegate often runs into 2 common pitfalls when they try to outsource it. First, there's the contingency recruiter.
Right, the ones who get paid only if they fill the role.
Yeah, and they're juggling maybe 15, 20 searches at once. They're going to prioritize the easy placements, not necessarily the perfect fit for you.
Makes sense. What's the other pitfall?
The hourly recruiter. They're paid for time, not for outcomes. So there's really no incentive for speed, and the process inevitably drags on, burning out the best candidates.
So the CEO needs to stay involved, but strategically involved. What are those key leverage points the CEO absolutely cannot delegate?
Okay, there are 4 things they just can't skip. First, co-authoring the search blueprint and the scorecard. Really defining the target objectively from the start.
Got it. Blueprint and scorecard.
Second, weighing in on the shortlist, the slate, after the initial vetting is done.
Okay.
Third, being the first internal candidate touchpoint. The CEO needs to establish that high-level vision and make the culture pitch personally.
Sets the tone.
Absolutely. And fourth, the final vetting with the board. That's where the CEO's limited time has the absolute biggest impact.
And the rest, the sourcing, scheduling, detailed vetting.
That can be delegated, but ideally to a specialized partner who knows this world inside and out.
Okay, makes sense. Mistake number 3 feels like more of a mindset issue. Waiting until it's urgent instead of pre-building talent pipelines and campaigns in advance. This sounds like that classic reactive leadership versus proactive system building.
It totally is. If you're waiting until your current VP suddenly quits, or, until the board demands a specific hire for the next funding round, you've already lost.
You're behind the curve.
Way behind.
Mm-hmm.
Recruiting, especially for executive talent, it has to be viewed as an ongoing, always-on system, not a panic button you hit when things go wrong.
So what does that look like practically?
Proactive CEOs, they invest the time today to build out the search blueprint, to define the scorecard for roles they might need in, say, 12 months.
So if the need suddenly arises, they aren't starting from absolute zero.
Exactly. They can spin up a really high-velocity search in maybe a single hour-long meeting.
Yeah.
Because the targeting, the pitch, the process, it's already defined.
Whereas reactive hiring
costs you time, it costs momentum, and it inevitably forces you to compromise on quality. Proactive hiring compounds. It ensures you always have this warm list of potential leaders who already know who you are and what you stand for.
And that leads us perfectly into mistake number 4, which is really about market awareness, assuming your network, or just posting a job, is enough to surface an A player. This is that post and pray failure we see all the time, isn't it?
Oh, constantly. Look, the best executives, the ones you really want, they are passive candidates.
Meaning they're not actively looking for a new job.
Precisely. They must be courted. They're not reading job boards. They're not filling out generic online applications. They need to be hunted, approached with a highly personalized, really compelling narrative.
So relying on like LinkedIn posts or maybe interest from your investors or general job sites.
That's using like a level 1 tactic for what is definitely a level 4 problem.
Yep.
It just won't work.
Okay, you mentioned levels. This brings us to a really crucial framework the report emphasizes, the talent recruitment ladder. This sounds essential for matching your method to the actual level of talent you need.
Absolutely essential.
Yeah.
Because the higher you climb this ladder, the more complex, the more discrete, and the more narrative-driven your outreach has to become. If you misapply the strategy at any level, you're basically guaranteeing failure.
Okay, let's walk through the levels. Level 1.
Level 1 is low to mid-level recurring roles. Think high-volume, process-driven positions. Your SDRs, junior engineers, admin staff. These candidates are often actively looking.
So for these roles.
Here, it's all about efficiency and cost control. You use the job platforms, you cast a wide net, you use automation where you can. And this is exactly where something like Bearhug's top-of-funnel talent offering fits in perfectly.
How?
They leverage AI-native workflows to automate this kind of repeatable work for non-executive roles. And that drives the cost per hire way down, sometimes as low as $2,500. It's systemization, but done at scale.
Okay, makes sense for high volume. What's level 2?
Level 2 is for specialized roles. These folks require niche technical depth or very specific domain expertise. Think, certain technical operators, highly specialized engineers.
Where do you find them? They're not browsing Indeed either, I assume.
No, but they are active in focused online communities. Places like GitHub, specialized forums, maybe industry Slack groups.
And reaching them requires
Insider fluency. Your pitch has to be crafted by someone who actually understands their craft, speaks their language. Generic HR outreach, it'll just get ignored instantly.
Got it. Level 3.
Level 3 is the leaders. This is often the sweet spot for, say, seed or Series A startups. These are your emerging senior operators, VPs, functional heads of X.
Okay, who are they typically?
They're often the high-velocity individual contributors or maybe the number 2s at successful Series B or C companies. They're ready to step up and own a function entirely.
And they have that growth experience already.
Exactly. They have the muscle memory of growth. And crucially, they often carry, like, a chip on their shoulder. They're ready to prove they can lead the next growth story, not just execute someone else's.
How do you reach them? Still no job boards.
Still no job boards. But they will respond to highly personalized, narrative-driven outreach from a credible, discreet partner. Usually approached through platforms like LinkedIn, maybe industry events, but it has to be targeted.
Okay, and the top level, level 4.
Level 4 is the executives. These are your seasoned C-level operators. They bring strategic depth, usually gained at that $30 million to $100 million revenue scale. They require the absolute utmost discretion and strategic courtship.
When do you typically go after level 4?
You pursue level 4 talent, usually when you have strong product market fit and the primary need is scale. They're almost always accessed only through highly discrete third-party partners.
Okay.
This is really the domain of Bearhug's Master Platter, offering that white glove service we mentioned. The third party can actually gather candor on timing and motivation before even revealing your company name.
That reduces risk significantly.
Hugely. It mitigates the high risk inherent in approaching that passive C-suite pool directly.
And thinking about that master platter offering, the cost savings you mentioned averaging $33,000 off each executive search project, that seems directly tied to this level 4 need for precision and speed, right? Minimizing that time to scale cost we talked about earlier.
Absolutely spot on. The savings come from getting it right the first time, quickly, which is exactly what level 4 demands. You avoid the costly delays and mishires.
So the bonus mistake here connects all these levels.
Yes, the bonus mistake is using level 1 tactics to find level 4 people, or vice versa. It seems obvious, but people do it all the time. If you're paying a massive retainer fee to recruit a mid-level SDR, you're just burning money.
And if you're just relying on LinkedIn posts to find your next head of product?
You're burning time, and you likely won't find the right person. You absolutely have to match the methodology to the level.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit. We've talked about external strategy. Let's move to the internal operation. Mistake number 5, failing to define the 10 most important questions and answers every candidate must address.
Right. Most CEOs, they rely on gut feel, conversational flow. They ask great questions, maybe, but they never objectify the answers.
What do you mean by objectify?
Before you even start outreach, the entire interview team has to align on the 10 questions that truly reveal fit for the role. And critically, they need to define what a great, good, or deal-breaker answer looks like for each of those questions in advance.
That sounds simple, but that feels like a pretty profound shift. It moves away from just liking the candidate towards objective evaluation.
It forces the hiring team to define success against measurable behaviors and track records, not just chemistry or how well they chatted. True alignment starts with shared questions, long before anyone actually starts interviewing anyone.
Okay. Mistake number 6. Not designing, assigning, and calendaring your internal interview loop. This sounds almost like an admin failure, but you're saying it's a high-level strategic blunder.
It absolutely is.
Yeah.
A poorly orchestrated loop, it signals internal dysfunction. And it kills executive momentum faster than almost anything else.
How so?
Think about it from the candidate's perspective. If the scheduling is erratic, if your internal interviewers haven't pre-held blocks on their calendars, or if the candidate is left hanging for a week between interview rounds.
They lose interest. Or worse, they assume you're disorganized.
Exactly. Your top candidate will just quietly disengage. Velocity signals competence, especially to a candidate who probably runs a very tight ship themselves.
So what does good choreography look like here?
It needs to be precise. Who is actually in the loop? What specific competency is each person testing? What questions are they covering so you don't have annoying overlap? And how quickly can the feedback be gathered and synthesized? Bottom line, if you can't run a tight interview process, why would a top leader trust you to run the company?
Fair point. Okay, mistake number 7. Skipping predefining your reference check strategy, meaning who you'll call, what you'll ask, and crucially, when you'll ask.
Yeah, CEOs often stumble into 2 major hazards here. One is doing ad hoc back channels.
Calling people they know without telling the candidate.
Exactly. Which can leak, it can jeopardize a passive candidate's current job. It's unprofessional and risky. The second hazard is the last-minute scramble.
Rushing the reference checks at the end.
Or skipping them entirely because the CEO feels pressured to just close the deal. Big mistake.
So we need a system here too. What's the playbook?
The playbook is request 6 names up front, 2 people they reported to recently, 2 peers or key partners they worked alongside, and 2 direct reports they managed.
6 names. Got it. And the timing. This seems critical.
Timing is absolutely critical. The requests for the names are made after the internal team votes, yes, we want to hire this person, but the calls themselves, they are only made after the offer is formally accepted and before the candidate resigns from their current role.
Okay. Protects everyone.
Precisely. And crucially, great reference work isn't just about validation, like checking a box. It actually informs onboarding and coaching. You learn about their potential blind spots, you learn how they best succeed.
And what if a candidate hesitates when you ask for references?
Huge red flag. Massive. They might be setting up a counteroffer from their current company, or maybe they're trying to hide a past failure or difficult relationship. The best candidates, They welcome this level of diligence. They have nothing to hide.
Good indicator. Okay, mistake 8 is about creating leverage, not privately enrolling your trusted network to help promote senior level opportunities.
Yeah, just blasting it out on LinkedIn or Twitter. It dilutes the brand, invites noise, makes the role seem less exclusive. The strategic move is surgical enrollment.
What does surgical enrollment mean?
Once the CEO is signed off on that scorecard and the overall positioning, they package the narrative. It becomes a polished external asset, what the report calls the persuasive position brief.
Okay, like a one-pager.
Exactly. Captures the opportunity, the CEO's vision, and then you share it quietly with a select circle of trusted peers, investors, advisors.
And the key is how you ask them to share it.
Yes, you explicitly ask them not to post it publicly. Instead, ask them to forward it thoughtfully to just one or two specific people they know who really fit the archetype you've defined. This turns your network into this disciplined, consistent recruiting engine, ensuring every introduction is high quality and relevant.
Smart. Okay, mistake number 9, skipping the development of an internal search blueprint template. You're saying this is the single biggest structural failure. Why?
Because it means every single executive search starts from absolute scratch. There's no institutional memory, no repeatable process. It's incredibly inefficient and inconsistent.
So the blueprint is more than just for one search. It's the methodology for the whole organization.
Yes. It's the structured, repeatable methodology defining how your company sources, recruits, positions, and evaluates senior talent every time. And its most important component, the real capstone, is the scorecard.
Right. We mentioned the scorecard earlier. Let's unpack that. What makes it so powerful?
The scorecard is that single one-page decision framework. It makes hiring objective, not emotional, or based purely on who you liked best in the interview.
Okay, what needs to be in it? You said 15 criteria.
Yep, 15 criteria across 4 dimensions. First, the role's clear, unambiguous mission. Then, 5 key measurable outcomes for the first 12 months, like reduce customer churn by 15% or increase marketing qualified leads by 25%. Real business results.
Okay, mission and outcomes. What else?
Next, 5 core competencies. These are the crucial hard skills and the essential executive behaviors needed for this specific role. For example, ability to effectively manage up to the board, or demonstrated resourcefulness under constrained budgets. Maybe executive presence in front of large enterprise clients.
Got it. Competencies. And the last 5.
The 5 DNA traits. This is your culture fit piece. But it needs to be specific, not just generic terms like team player.
So give me examples.
Think. Demonstrates low ego. Shows a clear bias for action and speed. Exhibits intellectual honesty when faced with setbacks. Or has a strong willingness to both coach others and be coached themselves.
I can see how that works. When a debate over a candidate starts to devolve into just personality or gut feel.
You pull out the scorecard and you ask the team, did they meet the 15 criteria? Yes or no? It immediately cuts through that I just didn't like them bias. It brings objectivity back to the center.
That is powerful. Okay, last one in this section, mistake number 10, not pre-engineering, a simple way to test candidates for the exact competencies you need.
Right. Look, interviews are great for testing communication skills, maybe seeing how someone thinks on their feet, but they don't really test deep competence or how someone actually behaves under pressure in a real work scenario.
But we established earlier, you can't just ask a passive senior candidate to do free work, right? That's insulting, unprofessional.
Totally insulting. You absolutely cannot do that.
So how do you find that balance? How do you test competence without asking for free consulting?
You design a lightweight, hopefully inspiring, maybe 2 to 3 hour challenge. It needs to mirror a real scenario they'd face in their first week on the job. And crucially, it arrives after the candidate is already emotionally invested in the role, maybe after the second or third interview.
And the goal isn't necessarily a perfect answer.
No, the goal isn't perfection at all. It's to see how they think, how they structure a solution, how they collaborate or interact with your current team members during the exercise. It should feel less like a test and more like a preview of actually working together.
Can you give us some tangible examples for different functions? What might this look like?
Sure. For a potential sales leader, maybe it's a 15-minute mock coaching call where they give feedback to one of your current, maybe struggling sales reps. You're looking at their communication style, their feedback approach.
Okay, for sales, what about marketing?
For a marketing leader, maybe you give them an anonymized data set from a recent campaign and ask them to spend an hour analyzing it and proposing the next 3 experiments they'd run and why. Product leader. Maybe a quick review of recent customer feedback or NPS comments. And ask them to prioritize the next development sprint critically, explaining their rationale. How do they make trade-offs?
Finance.
Could be reviewing a simplified P&L statement and identifying the top 2 areas for efficiency gains. Again, it's about seeing how they think and structure their analysis, not getting the right answer necessarily.
Okay, let's bring this section together with the first case study mentioned in the report, the ServiceUp CPO search. This seems to really underscore the value of getting this precise setup right from the start. Tell us about ServiceUp.
Yeah, ServiceUp was a Series B auto tech marketplace. They were doing well, but needed a chief product officer to really scale them towards that $100 million revenue mark, a critical hire.
And the CEO's initial instinct, like many founders, was probably to look within their own industry, right?
Exactly. It was logical. Their first thought was, we need someone who knows cars and software deeply. They started hunting within the auto tech industry, looking at direct competitors. But then the Search Blueprint process changed things completely. Once the Bearhug team worked with the CEO to apply the Search Blueprint, defining those 15 criteria, especially the outcomes and competencies needed for a $100 million scale, that initial industry bias was actually disproven.
So the required competencies weren't necessarily niche auto knowledge?
No, they were much broader. They were about solving really complex operational challenges in highly fragmented marketplaces, building scalable product systems, managing data complexity skills that weren't unique to auto tech at all.
Interesting. So where did the search pivot to?
The search got completely reframed. The strongest potential fits, the candidates who had already solved these kinds of scaling problems, weren't in auto tech. They were in adjacent industries, like complex healthcare platforms or sophisticated AI-driven marketplaces in other verticals.
So leaders who had built similar muscle groups but in a different sport, essentially?
Precisely. These leaders had already built the specific kinds of operational and product systems ServiceUp needed for its next chapter.
And the result?
By using the scorecard to pivot the industry target away from the obvious initial assumption, they landed their ideal CPO, a leader who had previously scaled AI-driven marketplaces in just 57 days.
Wow, that's fast for an executive search.
Very fast. And think about the alternative. Had they stuck to their initial narrow instinct focusing only on auto tech, they would have likely hired someone capable of managing the last chapter of growth, not the next one. They might still be looking, or worse, hired the wrong person.
So the key takeaway from this whole first section on structured recruiting setup is pretty clear then.
Yeah, it's simple. You absolutely must front-load the strategy. Structure the process internally, define the outcomes objectively using something like the scorecard, prepare your assets like the position brief before you ever open a single candidate conversation. Get the foundation right first.
Okay, that wraps up the foundational structure, the internal setup. But, the best framework in the world is useless if you end up targeting the wrong people, or if your target list is basically just a wish list instead of a real strategy.
Yes, exactly. Section 2 digs into those comprehensive sourcing setup mistakes. This is all about defining your target market accurately and, crucially, building a list that's large enough to actually guarantee success.
All right, let's kick off this section. Mistake number 11. Failing to define a baseline of red flags that should instantly disqualify a candidate on paper.
Yeah, this is about taking the CEO's internal filter, the stuff they often know subconsciously but haven't articulated, and getting it down on paper. This saves enormous amounts of filtering time later.
So what kind of behaviors or career trajectories should just stop the process right away, even if the resume looks shiny?
You need to document these disqualifiers explicitly. For some companies, that might be constant industry hopping, maybe more than 3 industries in 5 years, which can signal impatience or lack of focus.
Okay. What else?
It might be previous senior roles at companies known for having really toxic cultures, which could suggest a cultural misalignment with your values. Or maybe it's specific resume language that just screams too much of a generalist when you need a deep specialist.
And once these are documented,
Then everyone involved in sourcing, whether it's your internal team or an external partner like Bearhug, operates from the exact same pattern recognition framework. It ensures precision right from day one, so you're not wasting time on profiles that were never going to work anyway.
makes sense. Okay, mistake 12. Misaligning on which direct or adjacent industries are a bullseye, and, just as importantly, which to avoid. This sounds like a critical strategic blunder, especially if list building gets outsourced without clear CEO guidance.
It's huge. You need really clear boundaries defined upfront. Direct industries, those are the obvious ones. Similar go-to-market motions, similar technical complexity.
Okay.
Then you have adjacent industries. This is often where the gold is hidden. Think
Yeah.
same muscle groups, different sport. Tapping into adjacent industries can often double the size of your potential talent pool.
And the third category mentioned, the ones to actively avoid.
Yes, you absolutely must define the avoid industries too. These might be companies with fundamentally misaligned operational cultures or maybe outdated business models where the candidates would actually have to unlearn bad habits to succeed with you.
So how big should this target market map be ideally?
The report is pretty specific here. It insists that the sweet spot for your market map, considering both direct and adjacent industries, minus the avoids, should generate somewhere between 200 and maybe 800 viable source companies to research within.
Why that range? 200 to 800.
Anything smaller than 200, you're kind of relying on luck. That 200-800 range gives you the breadth needed to ensure certainty that the perfect candidate actually exists within your defined target zone.
Okay, that provides a tangible target. Now, mistake 13 is probably the most counterintuitive one for early stage, often cash-conscious founders. Targeting candidates at companies at the wrong stage. And the pro tip is, go 2 to 3 stages bigger. Explain that.
It boils down to this. Candidates carry stage experience. It's like muscle memory. And that experience fundamentally determines their ability to build systems that scale effectively.
So if you hire someone who's only ever built systems for, say, a $5 million company,
They will likely struggle, maybe even fail, when your company hits $30 million in revenue. They just haven't seen that level of complexity before.
okay, but let's challenge that. For a Series A founder, maybe with a constrained budget, doesn't targeting a leader from a Series C company create problems? Like an insurmountable salary mismatch, or maybe a cultural clash where the exec expects way too much infrastructure that just isn't there yet.
That's a really fair challenge, and it's exactly why the search partner has to manage expectations very carefully on both sides. But the core rule generally stands. Hire people who've already successfully navigated your next chapter of growth.
You're buying their muscle memory, their playbook for the future.
Exactly. They know the kinds of systems required to manage increasing complexity, how to scale teams effectively, how to interface properly with an institutional board. Yes, the compensation might be higher, but the cost of hiring someone who is unprepared to lead that next crucial chapter is almost always exponentially greater than the salary difference.
So the rule of thumb is a seed or Series A company should be aggressively targeting leaders currently at Series B or even Series C companies.
Generally, yes. And the reverse problem also exists, right?
Meaning?
Series B or C companies should almost never pull leadership directly from a seed or a Series A startup,
Why not?
unless that specific candidate shows truly consistent, steep upward progression and a crystal clear understanding of the complexity gap they're about to jump into. Otherwise, the gap in existing structure, resources, and process maturity usually leads to massive disappointment and failure for everyone involved.
Got it. Stage appropriateness is key, but looking ahead. Okay, mistake 14, not predefining appropriate titles or the required level of experience.
Yeah, clarity here beats volume every time. We all know title inflation is absolutely rampant, especially in early-stage tech. That chief officer of something title at a pre-seed startup with 4 employees, that should be a yellow flag requiring serious caution, not an automatic green light.
So how do you counteract that title inflation? How do you get to the real substance behind the label?
You have to zoom out. You need to review the candidate's full career trajectory. Look at their progression across different roles. What was the actual size and stage of the company during their tenure there? Were their moves truly upward promotions, or were they lateral moves, or even steps down masked by a fancy title?
Context is everything.
Context is the truth. You really need a structured ranking system to score profiles objectively, because titles are just labels. The context tells the real story of their experience and capabilities.
Okay, let's shift to some specific filters now designed to de-risk the hire, especially around personality fit and commitment. Mistake 15, ignoring tenure requirements. The report calls out the 4 in 10 rule. Okay, I remember seeing this highlighted. It's cited as maybe the single best de-risking filter in the whole report. Explain the 4 in 10 rule.
Simple but powerful. You look at the candidate's professional history over the past 10 years. If they have worked at 4 companies or fewer during that decade,
Okay.
it generally signals commitment, resilience. It suggests they stay long enough to actually finish complex projects, see initiatives through, and deliver real, lasting outcomes.
And the flip side.
If they've worked at, say, 7 or more companies in the past 10 years, that often signals volatility, maybe impatience, or sometimes it indicates they're habitually using external offers just to get counteroffers and raises from their current company. It's almost always a pass signal for high-growth startups needing stability.
Are there any critical nuances within that tenure analysis beyond just the number of companies?
Absolutely. Two big ones. First, you generally want to avoid candidates who have been in their current role for less than 2 years. Why?
Vesting schedules.
Exactly. Vesting schedules are powerful anchors. The best leaders typically want to see those vest. Plus, they want to complete meaningful cycles of work. The real sweet spot for tenure in the current role is often around 3 to 5 years.
And the other nuance, the risk at the other extreme.
Yeah, someone who's been in the same role or the same company without significant progression for maybe 8 to 10 years or more, that can signal comfort, maybe stagnation, rather than growth and ambition. And comfort is usually fatal in a high-velocity startup environment.
Okay, good flags to watch. Mistake 16, not defining your ideal candidate's career journey from college to today. Now, you clarified this isn't about finding an exact clone, right? It's more about mapping the successful archetype.
Precisely. If you don't consciously map out what a successful journey looks like for this specific role at your company's stage, then you don't really know what questions to ask to validate if a candidate is on that path.
And what does this mapping exercise often uncover?
Often, it reveals that there might be 2, maybe even 3 viable parallel career arcs that could lead to success in the role. For instance, your ideal head of marketing might realistically come from a heavy brand and creative background, or they might come from an intensely data-driven performance marketing background. Both could work, but they bring different strengths.
And how do you actually use that imagined narrative or those archetypes in the process?
You use it to guide your interview questions, probing for experiences that align with those successful paths. And crucially, you use it to assess the candidate's own self-awareness about their journey. When they walk you through their career, does their explanation, their narrative, align with the functional archetypes you mapped out? Are they aware of the key inflection points and experiences that specifically prepared them for this role right now?
That self-awareness piece seems key. Okay, mistake 17 is one that feels like it's often overlooked, especially in the rush to hire. Failing to spell out the current state of the tech stack and the operational playbook, why they exist as they do, and crucially, what the new hire will actually inherit.
Oh, it's a massive missed opportunity in positioning the role effectively. Look, top candidates, especially the builders you want, they need to know what they're walking into. Are they inheriting a completely broken mess that they need to fix from the ground up? Is it a decent system that just needs optimizing? Or is it a well-oiled rocket ship they just need to accelerate?
And if the CEO can't clearly articulate the current state of their key functional systems, how sales pipe is managed, the marketing attribution stack, the product roadmap cadence, what does that signal to a sharp candidate?
It signals, at best, a lack of transparency, and at worst, maybe incompetence, or that things are more chaotic than they're letting on. You need to document the truth, warts and all.
Because transparency attracts the right people.
Exactly. Transparency attracts the builders, the problem solvers who want to own the fix or the scale-up. Hiding the mess, or glossing over it, tends to attract optimists who might be unprepared for the actual reality of the day-to-day work.
Okay, makes sense. Finally, in this section, mistake 18, which the report calls the quiet search killer. Failing to source 50 or more A-player profiles before any outreach actually begins.
This is where certainty really meets the laws of probability. Having only 10 or 20 names on your initial target list, that's not a strategy, it's a wish list. It gives you absolutely no margin for error.
What happens with such a small list?
A list that's small means if just 2 or 3 key people say no, or go cold, or accept another offer, your entire process stalls out. You simply cannot run an executive search project with tight, predictable timelines unless you start with sufficient volume at the top of the funnel.
Okay, let's run through that math of certainty again, because this seems absolutely vital for CEOs to understand.
Right. The math, based on hundreds of searches, looks roughly like this, starting with 50 staged, well-researched A-player profiles.
Okay, 50 targets.
That usually leads to about 25 meaningful initial connections or conversations. Of those 25, maybe 10 to 12 will turn out to be genuinely qualified deep dives, people who make it through the initial screening and are truly motivated and interested.
And that pipeline yields.
That pipeline produces the robust 3 to 4 person finalist slate that you absolutely need to confidently present to your board and make a final decision.
So the bottom line is,
the quality and the quantity of your upfront research sourcing are directly proportional to the quality of your final hire. You have to start broad, filter hard, based on objective criteria to guarantee a great outcome within your timeline. No shortcuts on volume.
okay, let's look at case study 2, the TraceAir CEO handoff. This seems like a great example of how a structured search, driven by that necessary volume of research, can allow for flexibility and even superior outcomes, particularly during tricky internal transitions.
Yeah, TraceAir is an interesting one. They were a long-term partner of Bearhug. The firm had actually helped build out most of their leadership team over about 5 years.
Okay, so close relationship.
Very close. And the founders eventually decided the company had reached a significant inflection point. They felt it needed a different type of CEO for the next phase of growth. So Bearhug kicked off a structured external search focused on that level 4 executive talent we discussed.
And the search itself went well.
Extremely well. It quickly surfaced a slate of really exceptional, truly world-class external CEO candidates. But the real drama, the interesting twist, actually unfolded internally.
How so?
Well, the sitting COO at TraceAir, he was naturally closely involved in the interview loop, meeting these external candidates. And through seeing the rigor of the search process firsthand and assessing the caliber of the external competition,
He had a realization.
he had a major realization. He looked at the objective scorecard, looked at the external candidates, and realized that he was actually the best internal choice to lead the company's next chapter. He had the context, the internal respect, and he matched the scorecard criteria.
Wow, that takes a tremendous amount of self-awareness and also trust in the process. But how did the company manage that pivot? Didn't that derail everything?
Not at all. Because the search blueprint, the scorecard, the criteria, was also clearly defined up front. They didn't have to start over from scratch. Bearhug helped the founders objectively evaluate the COO against the same scorecard used for the external slate.
And he came out on top.
He was confirmed as the right leader for the next phase. So the search then pivoted instantly. The goal changed from finding a new CEO to finding the COO's perfect complementary partner, the person who would fill the operational gaps the COO would leave by stepping up.
Ah, so they used the existing research.
Exactly, and that led them straight to Joel LeBlanc. He had actually been identified during the initial external sourcing phase for the CEO role,
Right.
but he'd been previously disqualified from the original CEO brief, ironically, because the feedback was he seemed too much like a COO profile.
Which now made him the perfect fit.
The absolute perfect second in command. So the team pivoted again, recruited him, and secured him as the new president, working alongside the internally promoted CEO.
And the outcome for TraceAir.
Joel LeBlanc was reportedly instrumental in driving their subsequent $100 million growth story, and the former COO thrived as the new president and CEO. It just proved that a rigorous, objective search framework doesn't just find external talent. It can also test, validate, and even elevate internal talent, allowing for these optimal strategic pivots when needed.
Okay, we've covered the internal structure, the workflow. We've covered the sourcing strategy, getting the targeting and volume right. Now we get to the third, and, maybe the most vital pillar, role positioning and pitch.
Absolutely. This is where you create that magnetic narrative, the story that persuades the absolute top 10% of the passive candidate market to actually bet their career on your company's future.
And this section feels like it relies heavily on the CEO personally.
Entirely. It relies on the CEO's vulnerability, their conviction, their ability to tell a compelling story. Because the best leaders, they aren't just buying the job specs or the product features. They're buying into the founder's vision and, just as importantly, their integrity.
Okay, let's dive in. Mistake 19. Not fully articulating your contrarian views on product market dynamics and your core GTM instincts.
Right. A players, the really exceptional leaders, they craze the CEO's unique worldview. They want to hear that conviction, that belief that something others think is crazy or maybe impossible is actually the key to your company's success.
So if your pitch just sounds like a generic description of the current market,
Why would a top leader risk leaving a comfortable, successful role to join you? There's no hook, no intellectual challenge.
you have to really define that one core thing you believe about your market, your product, your approach that maybe the VCs or your competitors are completely missing.
Yes. And the pitch must clearly show how this specific executive, with their skills, can help prove that contrarian bet right. That's where, honestly, 90% of the emotional buy-in happens.
It shifts the conversation.
Totally shifts it from, do I want this specific job, to, do I want to be part of this specific mission? Much more powerful.
Okay. Mistake 20. Failing to tell your CEO story in full to align with and activate the ideal candidate's deeper why.
Look, the CEO's personal story is absolutely essential collateral in this process. Think about it.
Yeah.
You're asking this person, this top-tier executive, to commit maybe the next 5 to 7 years of their professional life, their prime earning years, to your company.
You owe them more than just the business plan.
You absolutely owe them your why. You need to weave in the personal alongside the professional. Talk about the mentors who shaped you, the early failures you learned from, the deep-seated convictions that actually fueled the company's origin story in the first place.
But isn't there a risk? How does a founder share their failures or vulnerabilities without signaling weakness or maybe instability to a potential hire?
It's all about the framing. You don't just share the failure itself. You share the lesson you learned from that failure. And critically, how that lesson informs your leadership and decision-making today.
So it shows growth, not just weakness.
Exactly. When candidates hear your authentic origin story, the struggles and the breakthroughs, they don't just understand what you built, they understand why you built it. And that creates a much deeper level of alignment, one that really transcends the details of the compensation package.
Got it. Mistake 21. Giving too little context about the company's current state before the interviews really get going, basically not sharing the real story. I can see why founders might play it safe here, thinking they need to protect the downside or not scare candidates off too early.
Yeah, it's a common instinct, but playing it safe actually handicaps your pitch. And, worse, it can breed distrust later on. Candidates, especially experienced executives, need a clear, candid State of the Union early in the process.
What should that include?
Runway situation, recent big wins, yes, but also the unavoidable setbacks you've faced recently. What's the current state of the team morale? Key gaps. They need the real picture.
And why is this transparency so crucial, particularly early on?
Because transparency builds credibility infinitely faster than any polished sales pitch ever could. When you treat a candidate like an insider from the beginning, giving them the good, the bad, and the stuff that's still messy or in progress, they feel respected.
They feel like a potential partner, not just a potential hire.
Exactly. And this often leads to what the report calls first conversations that feel like third ones. You accelerate trust, you get to the substantive issues much faster, and you build a much stronger foundation if they do end up joining, which leads perfectly into mistake 22, hiding the hard parts of the job or the known internal challenges.
Right. You mentioned earlier A players, the true operators. They actually self-select into hard problems. They're often motivated more by the challenge than by the comfort.
Absolutely. So if you hide the mess, if you paint an unrealistically rosy picture, you tend to attract optimists who might be great people, but are often unprepared for the actual reality of the difficult work required, and that leads to early burnout or disappointment.
So the required approach is radical candor.
Pretty much. You need to proactively name the friction. Be honest about team strengths, yes, but also the gaps. Talk openly about cross-functional realities where are the tensions. Be candid about where the competition currently holds an edge. Even discuss the worst piece of tech debt the new hire will inherit.
The report actually mentions a sourced anecdote here, right? A candidate who turned down an offer specifically because the CEO wasn't upfront enough about the mess in the sales tech stack.
That's right. That candidate basically said, look, if the founder won't tell me the truth about something as fundamental as the tech stack, what else are they hiding from me? It destroyed trust.
So what's the solution? How do you structure this candor?
The report suggests creating what they call a hard things brief. Maybe it's just a one-pager. Could even be talking points for the CEO. It has 3 simple columns. What's genuinely hard about this role or situation right now? Why is it hard? The root causes. And crucially, how do we plan to attack it, specifically with you, the new executive, helping lead the charge?
So it frames the challenge as an opportunity for impact.
Exactly. Honesty accelerates finding the right fit. Denial pretty much ensures misalignment down the road.
Okay, mistake 23. Glossing over the history of the role or the department. Specifically, why does this particular role exist right now?
Yeah, any savvy candidate needs to be able to clearly answer the question, why this job now? Is it a completely net new function the company's never had before? Is it a backfill because the previous person got promoted or left? Or sometimes is it a confidential replacement for someone who is still in the seat?
And the context around that matters hugely.
Hugely. The context needs to include any shifts in the mandate over time, any past attempts at filling this function that maybe didn't work out, and importantly, the lessons the company learned from those experiences.
Providing that history, even if it includes past failures, actually de-risks the decision for an elite candidate, doesn't it? It signals maturity and self-awareness from the company.
It absolutely does. The report suggests maybe creating another simple one-page brief, the role history brief. It should cover. Then, For example, maybe this function used to be handled directly by the founder. Now, example, it's broken or too small for current needs. Why it changed? For example, the complexity just outgrew our previous capacity. And clearly, what the next 12 months require from this role.
And this prevents the candidate from unknowingly walking into some kind of political or structural minefield on day one.
Precisely. Full transparency on the role's history is key.
Okay, mistake 24. Failing to share how and why customers actually buy your product and digging into your go-to-market motion in real depth.
Yeah, especially for GTM leadership roles, sales, marketing, sometimes product, the top candidates. They want the real data. They want to understand the typical deal cycles, the conversion rates at each stage of the funnel, which acquisition channels are actually working versus which ones are breaking or too expensive.
But founders often withhold this detailed data, right? Maybe fearing it will expose flaws or weaknesses.
They do, but it's a mistake. If you withhold that information, you fundamentally limit the depth of the candidate's ability to analyze the situation and exercise their strategic judgment during the interview process.
You're preventing them from showing you how they think.
Exactly. Sharing the GTM story openly, including the metrics, invites candidates to start thinking like owners immediately. It allows them to pattern match against their past experiences and maybe even offer insights or challenge your assumptions right there in the interview.
So transparency on the sales funnel, marketing attribution, product stickiness metrics, it's like a litmus test.
It's a litmus test for whether a candidate is truly capable of being a strategic owner, or if they're just looking for a job description to execute. Plus, frankly, hearing how different top candidates analyze your GTM can sharpen the CEO's own strategic thinking.
Good point. Okay, mistake 25. Not painting a vivid, realistic picture of the real company culture.
Right. Culture is the actual lived day-to-day experience of working at your company. It is absolutely not just a tagline on your careers page like fast-paced or high energy or work hard, play hard.
Those phrases mean basically nothing.
Right, they mean nothing. Candidates, especially experienced ones, want the actual texture of daily life. What does it feel like to work there?
So instead of a meaningless tagline, what should a culture pitch include? What kind of details?
You almost need to describe it like you're writing a travel guide for your company. Detail the physical or virtual environment. Is it open-plan chaos or focused quiet zones? What's the general rhythm? Do people typically arrive late and work late, or is there an emphasis on deep focus hours, say from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m.?
What else?
What's the decision-making style really like? Is it highly consensus-driven or more decisive and top-down? How is information shared? What's the actual social fabric? Do teams eat lunch together? Are there lots of meetings? Detailing the real hierarchy versus the org chart? All these things paint the picture.
Because culture mismatch is a huge reason executive hires fail.
It's one of the top causes, and it's almost entirely preventable if you provide this level of detailed, honest texture up front. Let candidates self-select based on the reality, not a vague slogan. Okay, moving towards the end here. Mistake 26. Not defining explicit 90-day and year-one outcomes before the search even begins.
We touch on outcomes for the scorecard, but this is about making them central to the entire search process. If you skip this, you end up hiring based on vague chemistry or just liking someone.
Which inevitably leads to post-hire disappointment and frustration when expectations inevitably diverge 6 months down the line because they were never clearly set.
So how should outcomes be defined? 90 days versus the first year?
The first 90 days should be viewed as the integration window. The outcomes here should focus on learning the business, building key relationships, demonstrating velocity, and achieving maybe some early measurable indicators of traction or quick wins.
And the first year?
The first year is the value window. Outcomes here must be tied to measurable business results. Things like hitting a specific revenue target, achieving a defined margin improvement, or reaching a quantified increase in operational maturity in their function. Real impact.
And this can't just be dictated by the CEO, right? It needs to be more of a two-way negotiation.
Absolutely critical point. You, the CEO, should start with our expected outcomes, clearly defined. But then, during the final interview stages, you present these to the candidate and ask for their proposed plan to achieve or even exceed them.
And the best hires.
The best hires won't just passively accept your predefined outcomes. They'll engage, they'll push back respectfully, they'll ask clarifying questions, and ultimately they will help you rewrite and refine those outcomes based on their experience. That act of co-creation demonstrates ownership and strategic depth before they even walk in the door on day one.
Love that. Okay, finally, mistake 27. This one is about the choice of who actually runs this entire high-stakes process. Assuming that a larger, more established, or maybe a specialized niche search firm automatically means better results.
Yeah, this is a really common mistake founders make when they decide to get external help. They confuse size or brand name or a narrow industry focus with actual quality of execution and outcome certainty.
What are the potential drawbacks of going with those big established firms, according to the report?
The drawbacks can be significant, actually. Things like internal bureaucracy leading to slower processes. Often you have multi-layered teams, so the partner who sold you the search isn't the person actually doing the work. Their cycles can be frustratingly slow.
And their data.
They often rely heavily on static, sometimes outdated internal databases, rather than doing fresh market mapping for your specific nuanced need. And perhaps most importantly, their fee structures are typically tied to time passing or hitting generic milestones, not necessarily to delivering the perfect candidate or ensuring the certainty of the outcome.
So you can end up paying more for a slower, less personalized, and maybe less agile process that isn't fully aligned with your specific definition of success.
That's often the case.
So what does the report suggest is the superior alternative then? How should you choose a partner?
The best firms, regardless of their size or specific niche, ultimately sell certainty. They commit to mapping the market from scratch, specifically for your unique role and context. They run a highly transparent process where you know exactly what's happening, and they are deeply, genuinely invested in the outcome, often structuring their fees around success. They act less like vendors and more like true strategic partners in a critical endeavor.
Makes sense. Focus on certainty and partnership, not just size or brand.
Okay, and before we fully close out the mistakes, the report added one final, timely thought the bonus mistake, labeled the AI hot take.
Right. Bonus mistake, believing that some shiny new AI tool is going to magically find and sign the absolute top 10% of the passive executive talent pool for you.
AI is everywhere in recruiting discussions now. What's the current reality according to this report?
The current reality is that AI systems are becoming fantastic for high-volume, maybe low to mid-level roles. Think back to level 1 on our ladder. AI can drive much better economics and efficiency there, which is exactly how Bearhug is using it in their top-of-funnel offering to lower costs.
But the executive level, level 3 and especially level 4, that's different.
It's fundamentally different. True executive leaders, the ones making complex, high-stakes career moves, require thoughtful, nuanced, strategic courtship. They're making a deeply emotional decision that involves their family, significant financial risk, their professional reputation, their legacy.
That human element, the trust building, can't be automated easily. That deep emotional calculation, that trust building, it really cannot be automated yet. And maybe just as importantly, the boards of directors overseeing these hires and the top candidates themselves still demand and frankly only trust a high-touch, human-led, confidential process for critical C-suite roles. AI isn't ready to replace that strategic partnership yet. Hashtag tag outro. So if we just, look back at all 27 of these mistakes we've covered, the core danger, the underlying theme, it's really undeniable, isn't it?
Yeah, it seems clear. Skipping that upfront strategic setup, getting the recruiting workflow right, nailing the sourcing strategy, crafting the pitch and positioning that is the real reason most executive searches fail, it leads to massive lost opportunity costs, stalled growth, immense frustration.
It's the unforced errors made before the search even starts that kill you.
And the smartest CEOs, the ones who consistently win the war for talent, they understand this. They know they absolutely must front-load the strategy, which, really, is exactly what Bearhug's holistic solution seems built to address.
Right. Bearhug helps clients by offering this holistic recruiting solution that's pretty unlike anything else on the market. They effectively run two parallel tracks, depending on the need.
Okay, let's recap those two tracks for everyone.
Sure. So the first track is their Master Platter offering. That's the real white glove service, designed specifically for those senior level, level 3 and level 4 roles we talked about. And because of its precision and efficiency, it can actually save clients an average of $33,000 off each executive search project compared to traditional models.
That's significant savings, directly addressing the high cost of getting these critical hires wrong or taking too long. And the second track?
The second track is their top-of-funnel talent offering. This is built for the non-executive roles, your level 1 and maybe some level 2 positions. Here, clients can fill roles for as little as $2,500 per hire.
Wow, $2,500. How do they achieve that?
Because the team has invested heavily, especially over the last 9 months or so, rebuilding their entire tech stack from the ground up using these new AI-native workflows, that allows for Much better economics, particularly for higher volume roles. And those are savings they can now pass directly down to their clients.
So it's a flexible, dual-track model, high-touch strategic partnership for the exec roles, and tech-enabled efficiency for the volume role.
Exactly. It allows them to target every level of your organization with the right methodology, precision, and cost effectiveness.
Okay, so if you're listening to this and you've recognized any of these 27 mistakes in your own current or upcoming hiring plans, or maybe if you simply want that certainty that your next crucial executive search won't fail, well, now is probably the time to act.
Yeah, don't wait until it's urgent. You can book a diagnostics discovery call directly with Bearhug using the link that's right there on the webpage you're likely viewing now.
And what happens on that call?
Bearhug can discuss your specific needs, your stage, your roles, your challenges. They can help you diagnose where your current process might be weak and then create a custom solution. A solution that'll likely scale for less than trying to bring the entire recruiting function fully in-house.
And gives you better access.
And, crucially, gives you access to that top 10% of the passive talent pool for every one of your hires, not just the executive roles. And ultimately, that kind of talent advantage is what helps you, well, frankly, spank the pants off your competition.
Love it. Okay, our final thought for you to chew on today, building on everything we've discussed. Every truly great, scalable company you admire, any market leader, was fundamentally built on one truth: competitive advantage is ultimately a who, not a what.
It always comes down to the talent.
Always. So the biggest mistake you can possibly make is waiting too long to start tuning your hiring engine just as carefully, just as strategically, and just as objectively as you tune your go-to-market engine or your product roadmap. The time to build certainty in your hiring is right now.